Rain. It always came around this time of year. Not the violent kind, but soft, deliberate, almost respectful. It fell across the marble garden like grief that refused to fade. Every year Evelyn Cross came here, same black umbrella, same silent steps through her private memorial estate overlooking the Pacific. To most of the world, she was the woman who built silicon by hand, the billionaire who coded her first program in a college dorm and turned it into a global tech empire. But beneath all the gloss, she was just a widow. A woman still waiting for the ocean to give something back. Her husband, David Cross, had vanished 2 years ago in a plane crash. The wreckage was found. The body was not. People called it closure, but Evelyn never used that word. Closure is what you give to stories, not to people you loved. She brushed her gloved fingers over the engraved name, David Jonathan Cross, 1978 to 2023. The rain tapped quietly on the stone. Then, a voice broke through the downpour, small, trembling, but certain. "Miss Cross, your husband's not dead." Evelyn froze. The sound was so unexpected, so clean, it didn't even feel real. She turned slowly and saw him. A black boy, maybe 13, stood by the iron gate. Hoodie soaked, sneakers caked with mud, holding something tight against his chest. Rain streamed down his face like tears he wasn't willing to claim. Her security detail stepped forward, hands ready. She raised one hand without looking at them. "No, let him speak." The boy took a step closer, his voice cracking under the weight of the storm. "I saw him, last week, down by the docks. He's alive." Evelyn blinked. "What did you say?" The boy swallowed hard, then extended what he'd been clutching, a water-stained photograph. It showed a man, dishevelled, bruised, chained to a metal post in a dim warehouse. Even through the blur, even through the distortion of rain and time, that face was unmistakable. The scar across his left cheek, the same one Evelyn used to trace when she couldn't sleep. Her umbrella slipped from her hand. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. The boy's name was Malik Turner. He'd been living in a temporary shelter on the east side, one of those government places where the beds creaked and nobody stayed long enough to know your last name. He said he'd been scavenging near the industrial port, looking for cans or wires to sell. That's when he saw something through a half-open warehouse door. A man chained, whispering a name over and over. Evelyn. Malik looked up at her. "I thought it was crazy at first. Then I saw his picture on the news archives." He pointed at the photo. "It's him, your husband." Her chest tightened, the kind of pain that comes from a hope you've spent years trying to bury. For a moment, she said nothing, just listened to the storm around them, the only sound that didn't lie. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. One stepped closer. "Ma'am, he could be scamming you. We'll remove." Evelyn's voice sliced through the rain. "Touch him, and you're fired." The boy didn't flinch, didn't back down. He simply added, quieter now, "Down by Pier 14. That's where I saw him. The trucks don't move till midnight. That's when they bring people in and out." Evelyn's gaze darkened. Pier 14. She hadn't heard that name in years, not since one of her company's old storage sites had been sold to a private logistics firm. The rain grew heavier, the air thicker, as she stepped closer to Malik. "You're sure?" He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I wouldn't lie about this. I know what I saw." For the first time in 2 years, Evelyn Cross felt something stir. Not grief, not pain, but the first edge of fear. She turned back toward her husband's monument, the rain washing over her face like a confession. If Malik was right, then every official report, every investigation, every funeral speech had been built on a lie. If you're just joining this story, hit subscribe, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought about truth, money, and power. The sound of thunder rolled over the estate. Malik shifted uneasily under her gaze. "I can show you where," he said, "but I can't go there alone." Evelyn's security captain, a broad-shouldered man named Griggs, muttered from behind her. "Ma'am, this kid's probably hustling. People pull scams like this every day." She turned, her voice icy. "No hustler brings a photo like this." She held the image under the garden lamp. The chain in the picture gleamed faintly. Behind David's head, a shadowed wall marked with faded lettering, Asham. The rest was obscured by rust. Her eyes narrowed. "Ashmont Freight," she whispered. The name triggered something, a forgotten division of her company, sold off years earlier to anonymous investors. What if David had found something he wasn't supposed to? Evelyn looked back at Malik. "Where's the original photo?" "I still have it," he said. "I didn't know who to give it to. Cops don't listen to kids like me." There was no bitterness in his voice, just tired truth. For a brief moment she saw it. The difference between their worlds. She, a billionaire guarded by gates and silence. He, a child nobody saw unless he was being blamed for something. She took a deep breath, rain soaking through her coat now. "Get in the car," she said. Malik hesitated. "You believe me?" Her eyes didn't waver. "I believe my husband never would have stopped calling my name." As they walked toward the long black Bentley waiting by the curb, the world seemed to hold its breath. Malik glanced back one last time at the grave, at the man whose story might not be over. Then, from across the street through the mist, a black sedan idled silently. Its headlights blinked once, then again, and then it rolled away into the dark. Inside the Bentley, Malik shivered beside her. Evelyn stared at the photograph again, her thumb pressed against her husband's face. For the first time in years, the rain didn't feel cleansing. It felt like a warning. Because if her husband was still alive, someone had worked very hard to make her believe otherwise. And somewhere out there, in the cold belly of the city, that someone had just realized the secret didn't stay buried. The Bentley hummed through the rain-soaked streets, its tinted glass blurring the city into streaks of silver and shadow. Inside, silence ruled. Evelyn Cross sat stiff, arms folded, staring at the photo again, the one the boy had brought her. Across from her, Malik Turner sat shivering, mud streaking the pristine leather seats, water dripping onto shoes that probably cost more than everything he'd ever owned. He looked out the window, unsure whether to speak, but then, he said softly, "He called your name." Evelyn turned. "My name?" Malik nodded, eyes fixed on his hands. "He kept saying it, 'Evelyn, please,' over and over. That's how I knew he wasn't just some guy." Her pulse tightened. She'd heard recordings of her husband's voice hundreds of times since the crash. Old voicemails, interviews, speeches, but hearing it echoed by a stranger made something inside her fracture. "How close were you?" she asked. "Maybe 20 feet, Malik said. "I was behind the fence. There was this metal door with a small window. He looked right at me, like he was trying to make me remember his face." Evelyn leaned back, exhaling slowly. Her reflection in the window looked foreign, a woman too composed to admit fear. "Then what?" "They saw me." Malik's voice dropped. "Two men. One had something wrong with his arm. It clicked when he moved. They started chasing me, so I ran. I didn't even know what I'd caught on camera till later." Evelyn's eyes flicked to her driver. "Keep going." The city lights melted into the distance, a blur of power she built and privilege she couldn't feel. Finally, she looked back at Malik. "Why bring it to me?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "Because nobody listens to kids like me. But you look like somebody who might." It wasn't pity that made her chest tighten, it was recognition. She saw something in the boy's eyes she hadn't seen in anyone for years, raw honesty. She turned toward the window again, masking it. "Where do you live?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Everywhere. Sometimes the shelter, sometimes under the train bridge. Depends who's in charge that week." The car fell silent again. By the time they reached her estate, a mansion of white stone and steel perched above the Pacific, the rain had slowed, but the tension hadn't. Inside, the marble floor gleamed under soft gold light. Malik hesitated at the doorway, afraid to stain it. Evelyn said, "Shoes on. I can buy more marble." He nodded quietly and followed her through the hallway, past abstract art, security cameras, and silence that didn't feel human. In the kitchen, the staff had gone for the night. Evelyn pulled out leftovers, but Malik had already stopped pretending he wasn't hungry. He devoured the meal like time itself might take it away. While he ate, Evelyn spread out the photograph on the counter. "Can you draw what you saw?" He frowned, wiping his mouth. "You mean like sketch it?" "Yes." She slid a pen and paper across. Malik began drawing. His strokes were fast, confident, the kind of precision you only learn from having to remember things because nobody else will. He drew the sign above the warehouse gate, Ashmont Freight. Evelyn froze. That name again. "You're sure about the spelling?" she asked. He nodded. "I remember because one of the letters was faded." Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up her phone. "Reese Donovan," she said. Within seconds, a calm male voice answered. "Evening, ma'am." I need surveillance on Pier 14, immediately. Company name, Ashmont Freight. Reese didn't ask questions, former intelligence never did. He simply said, give me 3 hours. Evelyn hung up and turned back to Malik. You said he was calling my name. Was he alone? No, I think there were others, but he was the only one chained. Her throat went dry. Chained? Malik nodded. Like they didn't want him to move, like he was the reason the whole place existed. For a moment, Evelyn couldn't breathe. She walked to the glass wall overlooking the ocean. In the reflection, she saw herself standing beside a boy who should have been invisible, yet somehow saw more than her entire security team. If you're watching this right now, remember to hit subscribe, because the next few minutes might be the difference between truth and illusion. What Evelyn discovers next changes everything. Thunder cracked outside. The storm hadn't left. It had just moved further out to sea. Hours passed. Evelyn tried to read, but every word blurred into the same sentence. He's alive. When her phone finally buzzed, it wasn't Reese's voice she heard first. It was static. Then, "Ma'am, you need to see this." She opened the encrypted message. A series of photos loaded, grainy, night vision stills from a drone hovering over Pier 14. In one image, 3 men unloaded crates stamped with the Ashmont logo. In another, a dim hallway lined with floodlights, and in the corner, faint, carved letters into a steel wall. DC Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth. David Cross. She didn't realize Malik had come to stand beside her. His small voice broke the silence. That's where they had him, isn't it? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The weight of 2 years collapsed inside her all at once. The funerals, the press, the condolences, all built on a lie so big it had turned grief into a product. She walked toward the window again, phone still glowing in her hand. Outside, the ocean moved like something alive, dark, endless, and watching. She whispered to herself, "He's alive." The words came out half prayer, half disbelief. Malik just nodded. "I told you," he said. "Nobody listens to kids like me." Evelyn turned toward him, really looked at him for the first time. The frayed hoodie, the cracked fingernails, the courage it must have taken to walk into a billionaire's garden and tell her the truth. "Malik," she said softly, "you've just changed everything." And as she spoke, somewhere deep beneath the city, inside a steel corridor marked Ashmont Freight, a camera blinked red, motion detected, because someone else was watching too. And they now knew. Evelyn Cross had started looking back. There's a kind of silence that comes before a storm, not the kind that shakes trees, the kind that changes lives. For Evelyn Cross, that silence came in the form of a single file, encrypted, anonymous, and impossible to ignore. Inside it, the proof. Ashmont Freight wasn't just another shell company, it was hers, registered under one of her own offshore subsidiaries, signed digitally by her late husband, David Cross. Her world stopped breathing. If David were dead, someone was using his ghost to move something darker than money. If he were alive, that ghost might just be him. Whoever built this web had done it with her fingerprints, her empire, her name. And that meant one thing. The betrayal wasn't out there. It was inside her boardroom. That night, Evelyn sat in the back of her Bentley, the city lights smearing across the tinted glass like fading stars. Beside her, Malik Turner. Small, silent, clutching a notebook like it was armor. She finally spoke. "You said you saw my husband near the docks. Can you take me there?" Malik nodded, the kind of nod that didn't ask for trust. It just said, "Follow me." A billionaire with everything to lose. A boy with nothing left to protect. Together they headed toward the place where power hid its filth, Pier 14. Reese Donovan, her head of security, was already waiting. Ex-intelligence trained to see what others missed, but even he looked uneasy. He handed Evelyn a small tablet, drone footage, grainy but clear. Men with rifles guarding container yards, trucks marked Ashmont, movement only after midnight. Then he paused, zoomed in, and said quietly, "Look at the wall." There, carved faintly into rusted steel, DC David Cross, her husband's initials. For a heartbeat, Evelyn forgot how to breathe. That was the first time she whispered it out loud. "He's alive." They moved at midnight. Evelyn dressed down. No silk, no diamonds, no scent of power. Just a hooded coat, boots, and a silent determination that frightened even Reese. Malik guided them through back streets he knew too well. The kind that swallowed people whole and never gave them back. He was from those streets. Invisible in daylight, untouchable in shadow. For the first time, his invisibility wasn't a curse. It was their shield. "Stay low," Malik whispered, crouching beside stacked cargo crates that gleamed with oil. The night hummed with the sound of the sea, distant, cruel, endless. Inside the maze of shipping containers, something moved, a low hum of generators, the faint clang of metal. They followed the sound to a small guard shack, half collapsed, its windows blacked out. Reese pushed the door open. Inside, cigarette butts, scattered papers, and on the desk, a half-burned photo. David Cross, his face gaunt, eyes wide, terrified. Evelyn's knees buckled. Malik caught her before she fell. He'd seen that look before, the face of someone watching their whole world fall apart quietly. But before she could speak, a flash of light sliced through the fog. Headlights. Engines roared. Men stepped out, armed, faces hidden behind masks and rain. Evelyn froze. Reese reached for his weapon, but the lead man raised a hand. He stepped forward, tall, mid-40s, with a steel prosthetic arm that clicked when he moved. His voice was cold. "Ma'am, you were never supposed to see this. There are moments when money can't save you, when the people standing in front of you don't care about headlines or legacy, just silence." Evelyn straightened, rain streaking down her face like tears that refused to fall. "If you kill me," she said quietly, "this story hits every major network by sunrise." The man didn't flinch, he just smiled. Slow, cruel. "You think anyone out there cares who built what? We own what's left of your empire." Then, behind him, Malik whispered, barely audible, "I got an idea." He pulled a smoke flare from his pocket, the kind stolen from a construction site days ago. A spark hissed. A burst of orange fire flooded the night. Gunfire erupted. They ran through the fog, through chaos, hearts pounding, metal echoing, bullets slicing through air. Malik led them through gaps between containers, small enough for him to slip through, just wide enough for Evelyn to crawl after. When they finally broke free into the open, Evelyn turned back. The dock was burning. Not in flames, in truth, because now she'd seen enough to know the rot wasn't just on the ground. It reached all the way to the top, to her board, to her company, to her name. They made it back to the car, soaked, trembling. Reese is bleeding from a grazed shoulder. Malik sat silent in the back seat, staring out at the rain. Evelyn turned toward him, her voice cracking. "Why did you help me?" He didn't look at her. "'Cause nobody believes people like me till it's too late." Then he looked up, eyes sharp, voice steady. "But you listened." That line sat with her longer than the sound of gunfire, because for once she realized she hadn't listened out of kindness. She'd listened because she was desperate. And desperation, she knew, was what the world used to call faith when they ran out of explanations. If you're still watching, you already feel it, how truth hides where no one looks. Make sure you subscribe, because what happens next changes everything you thought you knew about who's really pulling the strings. Hours later, Evelyn's mansion turned into a war zone. Security alarms blared at 3:07 a.m. Reese was shot at the gate, chest armor cracked, barely alive. Documents gone. Servers wiped. Every trace of Ashmont freight erased. Evelyn walked through the ruins of her home, barefoot, robe soaked in blood that wasn't hers. Malik stood in the corner, flashlight trembling in his hand. "They won't stop till you stop looking," he said quietly. Evelyn looked at him, really looked, and something inside her shifted. The fear turned into something colder, sharper, resolve. "Then we make them look at us." Power is built on silence, but silence only lasts until the wrong person learns how to speak. And that night, under the weight of the rain, a billionaire and a boy made a promise to turn the story inside out, because the truth wasn't buried in the docks anymore. It was coming home. The next night, fog hugged the shoreline like a warning, the kind that told you some doors shouldn't be opened. But Evelyn Cross had stopped listening to warnings. The convoy had dropped them a mile from the docks. No headlights, no chatter, just the slow crunch of boots on wet gravel. Beside her, Malik moved like a shadow, alert, fearless in a way no child should have to be. And behind them, Reese limped, one hand pressed against his bandaged side, the other gripping a silenced pistol. "Last chance to turn back," Reese whispered. Evelyn didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on the looming shape of Ashmont Holdings, a concrete skeleton outlined in mist. Because when you've already lost everything, fear becomes a language you stop speaking. Inside the depot, the air was thick with diesel, rot and the faint hum of generators. Rows of cargo crates stretched endlessly, stamped with fake humanitarian logos. Each one is hiding something ugly. Malik flicked his flashlight twice, their signal to move. They followed the light until he stopped before a metal door marked Containment 7. He turned to her. "This is where I heard the voice." Evelyn's breath trembled, her fingers brushed the rusted latch, and for a moment she hesitated. What if the boy was wrong? What if grief had finally made her delusional? Then the sound came. A cough. Weak, human. She froze. Reese's eyes darted up. Malik's beam found a shape inside the cage and the world stopped breathing. David Cross. Alive, but barely. His hair was white where it used to be black, his ribs pressed through his skin like the structure of a broken ship. Chains bound his wrists. His lips cracked as he whispered, "Evelyn." She fell to her knees, the flashlight clattering. He was real. Not a ghost. Not a rumor. And sometimes the hardest truth isn't that someone's dead. It's that they lived through something worse. She touched his face, tears falling freely. "I'm here. I'm right here." David coughed up blood. "You shouldn't have come." From the dark, a metallic click echoed, steady, deliberate. Out of the shadows stepped the man with the steel prosthetic arm. His boots left echoes that made the room feel smaller. "You were supposed to stay a widow," he said. "It was easier that way." Reese raised his gun, but the man smiled. "You really think I came alone?" Above them, the catwalk lights flickered. Silhouettes moved in. Armed men. 3, 4, maybe more. Evelyn's mind raced. No way out. No time. Then Malik, quiet, watchful Malik, did something no one saw coming. He grabbed the flashlight, turned it straight into the man's face and blinded him. "Now!" Reese shouted. The gunfire cracked the silence like thunder splitting stone. Sparks flew. A bullet tore through a pipe, showering steam across the room. Reese stumbled but stayed firing. Evelyn dragged David toward cover, her lungs screaming. Malik crawled under a table, clutching the light like a weapon. In chaos, heroes don't wear capes, they just refuse to freeze. When the smoke cleared, one body hit the floor, not Reese's. The man with the prosthetic arm lay sprawled, the steel hand still twitching. Silence. Then Malik's small voice, "Is it over?" Evelyn turned. "No, baby, not yet." They broke David's chains. Every link snapped, felt like peeling a nightmare off his skin. Reese helped him stand, trembling but conscious. But David's eyes, they weren't the eyes of a man returning home. They were the eyes of someone who'd seen too much. He gripped Evelyn's hand, voice rasping. "Evelyn, Ashmont isn't the end. They're still inside your boardroom." Her world, the empire she built from scratch, now felt like a coffin. "They're using your foundation to move money," he gasped. "Your board signed the authorizations. Your name." He didn't finish. His knees buckled. Reese caught him before he fell. Outside, dawn broke, soft light on wreckage. Paramedics rushed in from the van they'd staged nearby. David was lifted onto a stretcher, oxygen mask pressed to his face. Evelyn followed until she couldn't anymore. Her knees gave out beside Malik, who sat in the dirt watching the sky turn from steel to gold. "You saved my husband," she whispered. Malik shook his head, wiping his face with the back of his sleeve. "No, ma'am. I just made you see what nobody saw." And maybe that's what truth really is, something you only find when the wrong person dares to speak it. As the ambulance pulled away, Evelyn's phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "You opened the wrong door." She stared at the screen, then at the boy. "Malik, we're not done." He looked at her, unsure whether to smile or run. "Does that mean we won?" She glanced at the rising sun over the ocean. "No," she said quietly. "It means we just made them nervous." If you're still watching, hit subscribe, because stories like this don't end where you think they do. Sometimes the biggest lies are the ones written in contracts and signed in daylight. Evelyn is standing alone by the pier. Her reflection stares back from the water, a billionaire who once thought money could buy peace. Now it's the reason she can't sleep. Power never sees the ones it steps over until one of them forces it to look down. Malik's silhouette appears behind her, hands in pockets. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. The waves crash against the shore. Distant sirens fade into silence. A woman with everything found truth in a boy with nothing. But the truth always costs something, and tonight it came due. If it were you, would you have stopped searching after the plane crash? Or would you have followed a stranger's voice into the dark? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to see what happens when Evelyn goes after the men inside her boardroom, then say it loud. We want part 2. Because the story of Ashmont Holdings has only just begun.